want to expand on the theory from yesterday. We're talking about resonance being the future. I don't think a lot of people really understood the concept. You see, we build out structures based on resonance. So one coil to the next when they're at equal value. What happens when they're not at equal value and they're at half? Well, it's going to change the positioning and how we see things. Here's how I knew the beat frequency was the ratio. Always grab this marker and it completely dries out with my Tesla coil. I don't know why, but I'll figure it out. If I simply set up structure like this, right? I have one coil, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 here, right? Now I want to build out from that. How do I do that? Well, each one of them puts out, you get where I'm going with this, right? This is how it builds out in each coil. Here is the point of intersection. In that point of intersection, this is not 1-to-1. 1-to-1 is here. Right here, is this. It started here. Here's my point here. One, 2, 3. This is how it builds out. Now that we have a basis of understanding, let's just take this out of 2 dimensions. Now, we got to go from seeing things with our eyes in 2 dimensions and putting them in our brain the right way in 3. Oh, we see the structure is flat like this. Let's turn it like this. Now we have the structure like this. We have our 6 points. Now we have to build them out. We are looking for something that has the frequency that matches within any part of our frequency range. Now, is it here? Is it here? Is it here? You notice when I'm sitting on a flat plane that I now did it dimensionally. Now we can start to build out. You see, we don't just build out to the side over here and say, oh man, that's it. That's not the way the structure works. It looks for that point. That point is here. Now we build to here. Now the point is here, we build to here. Every single time we do it, it has to build out in a specific structure. You see, the numbers have to match in a ratio. Whether it's 1-to-1, 1-to-3, you get what I'm saying? It has to build out in a ratio. Every time it builds out to the ratio, you get a beat. It goes there, da-dum, 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 da-dum. Okay? It's a beat. Your ratio is your beat frequency. Now you have to start seeing things in dimension with that beat frequency. This is why things build out in nature the way that they do. Everything is bound by the frequency that comes into it. The resonance frequency where it resonates, where it can take an atom and start to resonate it. Where it takes the molecule and resonates it. Every single thing has its structure on the plane that it's in. Atoms talk to atoms, molecules talk to molecules. It's just the way that it works. Each one of them builds out into a structure. Each one of them builds out into nature. Each thing has its own resonance value. As they build out, you can basically map it. Anywhere that thing matches that frequency, it'll attach. What happens if you get to something that is outside the bounds of what it wants to create? You see, that in nature is your abnormality. Sorry, I can't say the word. Abnormality. That's what it is. It's a thing that shows up every once in a while that shouldn't. That should tell you we're not in some kind of chaos universe, but we are in a coherent universe. Things must match. What do I mean by this? If we created our structure up here, now we're going to here, right? What happens if I have one out here? Will it try to go to that? Well, yes, it will. So it'll start to build the line to it, like this, right? It'll start to construct it this way. But what happens is when you go like this and you start to construct it out, all of the energy itself is positioned in here to a central point as it pulls in. This right here loses energy. And then it becomes this structure. If we have an abnormality, then that one stays. Energy works in patterns. It always has worked in patterns. You just need to understand how resonance works. It is specifically because of the frequency itself. You see, I think people get caught up in this wrong part about how frequencies work and how they work in resonance. You see, frequency is a single sound. Resonance is a dual sound put together in order to make resonance. Two things vibrating together. It's not one thing by itself. Although, if you have two things vibrating together, they can turn on something that'll vibrate by itself. The reason this is working is because nature works this way. You think it's mystical, you think it's something else. This has never been mystical. Tesla uncovered something very important about resonance and how it works. I don't think he put it out there all the way. It's the framework of nature. It is literally how things construct from one thing to the next. Every single thing is built this way. That's why everything can be mathematically calculated if you understand the correct dimensionality of it. If you start drawing things on a flat plane, that is your eyeballs. That is what your eyeballs are changing in your brain. You see, you see things and they come out as two. Your brain interprets them as three. When you completely put them as a two-dimensional object again, you didn't adjust it. If you've ever sat there and understood the Akashic Record, there's no language in it. It just isn't. It is all the understanding of the holographic brain, putting it together and putting together the three-dimensional structure that it should be. It sees everything without the filter of your eyeballs. Your eyeballs are working to screw up your brain and seeing it correctly because you're always putting through the filter of what your eyes see. Your brain doesn't work that way. Your brain sees things in the correct structure. It sees things in dimension. That's why they call it the mind's eye. It sees it in dimension. Our eyes see it as flat. You cannot take something flat and apply it to physics. It doesn't work. You must apply dimension. This is why you see the flower of life. But you may see it wrong. You see it as this flat flower. Always see things as flat. When you put the energy into it, it's not flat at all. It builds a superstructure. Let's go for a little test drive here, shall we? Let's get our brain working. I drew a flat 2D image. What does that actually build out to be? It builds out to be a Merkaba. You say, well, hold on, that's a long way from that to that, right? Take a 2D image, cut it out, put it in the light. The reflection comes out in the correct dimension in 3 dimensions. You take this structure, put it in the light, you get a Merkaba. We're filtering. Our eyes are filtering constantly. When we get it right, we could actually see what's going on. You see, resonance doesn't work on a flat plane. It never has. It works dimensionally. You must understand things in dimension as they go. So many tricks our eyes plays on us. What's light? Well, the color behind me might be black. Is it really black? Or is black just the reflection of that light? We misunderstand things. You must activate that third eye in your brain. And you must start seeing things in a different dimension. You see, you can use a lot of different terms here in physics, and I'm sure some people will apply them. I could trigger a lot of people right now. And I think it's hilarious because I could say one word and make you think a whole different thing. It's because your triggers are so set in your mind that that's what it is. That's what you were told it is. You didn't actually use your brain. You used the memorization part of it, but you didn't actually physically use your brain. You didn't actually think it through. You just took what they said and said, all right, I'll never do that. That's why I don't describe things in terms like that. Because if I say electrical, first thing you're thinking is AC and DC because you know them as electrical. I could be talking about piezoelectricity. Okay? Is it the energy of the earth? Let me just ask you that. Is your ether AC or DC? It's neither. It's energy. So why would I use the term electrical when I can use the term energy? The term energy, it more aptly describes exactly what I'm trying to tell you, that it's energy built out. Let's go to a little bit of different understanding of how we see things. And this trips people out because they don't understand when I talk about gravity in this part. So let's just go there. Everybody says your testicle, right? So funny, it puts out RF. Well, that's true, but what's the distance in the RF? In a DC version, it's super close, okay? You can't see it. Okay, on the outside of the Tesla coil, when it builds out, you can have a little bit of it. You get a little bit, okay? On the inside, you get none, okay? It's the impulse. It's the inside of it. You won't get any of it. It won't look like anything there. So if I said, okay, I looked at this, this is what it would look like on the inside. There's nothing. Now, how do I flip this so that you can see it? That's the DC version. Let's just do this. I am now going to go the opposite way. Let's go the AC version. You see it all day long. It's opening it up. If I wanted to get in between each wave of my RF, I have to put it in AC to open it. Your mind has to see things different. You cannot see it in 2D, you must see it in 3 dimensions. If energy is everywhere, it is built out where you can't see it with your eyes. It's everywhere. It's in a different form of energy. You must now transform that energy into something that's useful for you. This is why you cannot say electrical. It has to be energy. In order to transform states of it, you cannot see it in a conventional term. You will get lost in the term and never understand the concept. To get to DC to AC, you must understand that. That's why when I put a Tesla coil inside of a Tesla coil, but the center one's counterwound, I'm doing it for a reason. I'm converting that energy type to another energy type. Now I get AC. Now I can open up the RF. It all is based in a resonance system. I love dimensionality, guys. I don't think a lot of people do. I think they get lost in it. They get lost when you add geometry to things. They like things to move from left to right. They want things to always equal out. Geometry is not about equaling things out. It's about how things build out. See, they build structure in geometry. In algebra, it's an equal equation. It's this must equal this. It's a failure in nature because nature doesn't build out that way. Nature builds out in geometry. It always has. It's always growing something bigger than itself. Does it mean that it has more energy when it does? Not necessarily. It just means the size is different. The density of it's different as well. Could be more dense here in the smaller portion than less dense but in a bigger size. Nature builds out in geometry, never builds out in algebra. That's how I know every time I look at this stuff, if you're not using geometry and you're talking about physics, you have it in the wrong dimension in your brain. You are not using your brain. You're using your eyes to filter. You got to get out of that mode. You got to start seeing things for what they actually are. Energy types. I know that sounds wrong to you, and I'm sorry for that. I'm not going to use words that don't match what's actually going on because I will trigger you into thinking something else. When we talked about quantum entanglement, it's about the particle. Well, yeah, it is. I understand that. I'm not going against that. But every time I tell you about the particle, I'm telling you that they resonate together. I'm telling you that that's how it's working. I'm building the structure. I know it's in a beat frequency because the original one is not the same frequency. But because the way this builds out, sorry, I didn't draw a good circle there. I don't want you to make you think it's all egg shape or nothing. That's a little better. But you see it. It builds out. That's a ratio. There you go. You got to start seeing things the right way. And it's never just on a simple 2D image. There's always dimensionality from it because nature doesn't build in 2D. It never has. Even on a leaf, you say, well, a leaf has to have dimensionality. Well, yeah, it does. So many things we blur with our eyeballs, which is another thing. Your eyeballs are like camera lenses, they blur. Structures and substructures. This right here is how a butterfly wing goes. You see it as this, but then the only thing that you see is the pretty colors on the butterfly itself. Electron microscope tells you what these things are, how they build out in structure. Nothing ever builds out in 2D. You may perceive them that way because your eyeballs are screwed up going into your brain and how you perceive things. Never in 2 dimensions does this world work. It can't. It physically can't. Just look around your room. There's a shelf up here. There's something up here. There's a shelf down here. There's something down here. There's a TV over there. Okay? All of them at different states of dimension. If we're on a 2D plane, it'll never work. That's why I have trouble when they start saying this is how space-time works. Because they're taking a 2-dimensional plane and applying a part of 3 dimension to it that has no business being in it. The dimension of where you're sitting is like a little leaf in the center of a pond, but not just the flat pond. It's the ocean itself. The entire thing and every single dimension around it is that little pinpoint. We're not in this. That makes no sense in physics. Maybe it's just the representation of how you see it. You should never draw it that way because it's never that way. We're never on a flat plane. It doesn't build out that way. Nature doesn't work that way. Resonance itself is your structure in nature. It tells each thing where to be, where it interacts at, how energy moves from one thing to the next. Spark gaps work this way. Think about it. It likes to spark in one spot, but every once in a while it'll move to another, right? Until you create something that's down here. Once you create something that's down here from it, it'll flow this way. Just like this, and we'll no longer go that way. Because that's the path of the energy. Well, that's the same thing that resonance does. It builds out your structure solely based on that. That's how it knows how to build it again, 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 again. Repeating patterns, that's what nature does. It doesn't do randomness. Randomness is an abnormality that happens. It is not chaos theory. It cannot be chaos theory. It is all structured. Every last bit of it. I hope you start to understand this, okay? We see things built out in the ratio. So when somebody tells you they're building the flower and they're telling you about the ratio and they're just telling you about the amplitude of that beat frequency is what they're talking about, it's how big it builds out. You see, it's the distance. The distance equals the amplitude, okay? You're changing it. Frequency equals 1 over time, but frequency equals energy over distance, okay? So from this point to this point, you have a certain amount of energy that can be put in there as your amplitude, okay? Your ratio is set. Now you're just changing how big the object is. That's it. You set the parameter for it already. Hope this is understandable, guys. It's a whole different world than what the heck you think it is. And once you understand it in this way, it's hard to go back and look at traditional things the way they say that they are, that they work that way. Some things are just fundamentally wrong. And I can never look at space-time the way that you guys see it because it doesn't match how reality works. Come up with a different way to say it. I understand you have an X, Y, and Z axis. I understand positioning. But that's not what you're doing when you're saying it and you're just putting in this flat thing and you make it go like this. That's not what you're doing at all. You're actually teaching the wrong way to see it. You can have things that go everywhere in positioning. How they meet up in their position each time is okay. You don't have to show people the wrong way. Hopefully you understand a little bit more of what I'm talking about now. With that said, have yourself a great day.
The old man Bill. The old man Bill. The old man Bill. The old man Bill. The old man builds is broken in the head. People not seeing reality has put them in the red. Where conscious and spirituality restricted from the norm and replaced with the ignorance of basic magnetic form. The geometry of God keeps running through his head. That's what makes old man builds broken in the head. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. The old man builds. Spheres of destiny are spinning in his mind, making him travel back and forth in time, battling the establishment for just a little recognition. Has him forcing the world to understand his premonition. That world will have all the technology in the end, even if it means his life will fail to extend. The old man builds.